What's up guys, Gary and Odin here for GenVFX. Welcome to another tutorial number 55 as far as my maths is concerned. However, that doesn't explain why I've got about 70 on the website, so I don't think I've got that quite right. Nonetheless, today we're going to be talking, well, first of all, you can see there's something already there. If anybody has actually gone through all my tutorials, they'll notice that this is the one that does IES lighting and teaches about floors. I'll try and put a link in there to it. I mean, it's in the one-to-one folders. It's round in the 20s, early 20s, early 30s, and it's about making planks on the floors, using texture mapping, and how to go about doing that quite nicely, and also about adding IES lighting, and I think that's actually a better part of the tutorial, which are basically accurate light models. And so that was kind of in this scene. I've got rid of some other stuff that was in there because what we're going to talk about today is making a rug. Using the IES lighting, this means it's a bit more closer to as if it was an architectural thing. It's not. If I just go to the rendering port, you can see it's not. That's not even a finished render. That's just one that started and I've stopped it. But if we go down here into the modeling view, you can see this is basically the view down the camera. I'm just going to tilt this slightly and adjust that, and we're going to add into our scene. Let's add in mesh. Let's put a grid in here, and let's move it across like this. Put it somewhere where we can see it, and I'm going to pop out of the camera just for safety's sake now, and I'm going to lift it ever so slightly just so we can just have it above the floors. There you go. And let's turn on some wireframes so we can see that. And let's very quickly go into edit mode, and I'm just going to add some more subdivisions, just a few, not a huge amount, but a few. And let's go edge, let's go subdivide, and I'm just going to go subdivide. Whoops, no, wrong button, Gary. And I'm going to go subdivide once again. So edge, subdivide, and then what I'm going to do is we're going to go to vertex mode, and let's go to the top view by hitting 7, and let's just put a finger on control. Let's deselect that edge, and let's deselect that edge, and let's deselect this edge. Deselect this edge, and let's just press S again and just pull that up. There you go. So it just gets a little bit closer to the edge, and let's go back now to our let's go back now to our perspective view by just tilting. Don't hit 0, that goes back to the camera, and then you start messing with it, Gary, making a big pig's ear of it. I'm just going to lift this up a little bit, just so we get a little bit more there going on. And let's get this model now, the object, and let's move that down a little bit so we're almost back to where we were. Just there we go. And finally, I'm going to add a subdivision surface just to soften that out. And then object, I am going to smooth shade that. So essentially here, what we've got here is will be our little square rug. Because rugs aren't always rectangular. However, saying that, other rugs are available. So I'm going to now very quickly shade this with a kind of a Hessian-y browny kind of color. So we're in Workbench, so let's shift across from Workbench to our Eevee renderer. And in here, I'm going to very quickly throw on a shader. So let's create a shader in here. It's Principal BSDF, that's fine. And let's make it sort of a kind of a rough, rough Hessian-y kind of color, because most carpets underneath the actual stuff, actual like carpety bit and rug bit, it's just basically a nasty sort of Hessian sort of thing, like a sack that is all stitched through and run through, just so they don't all fall off. Otherwise, you just have a pile of like shag rug bits on your carpet. It wouldn't look very good now. And picking up and rolling it and putting it away would be practically, if not totally, impossible. I'm drifting again, aren't I? Right. So what we're going to do is we are going to increase the roughness, sorry. And we are going to reduce the specular. I don't want this shiny. I don't want a reflective. I just want it bland. The blandest thing on the floor. And I'm going to very quickly call it rug. I'm just going to close down that collection there, which we've got, which is everything else basically in the environment. So it's just all locked away. We're going to click that so I can't pick it, just for safety, because I know what I don't like. And what we're going to do now is we're going to pick this ruggish thing. Ruggish. Sounds very roguey. And I'm going to go down here to our particle tab. I'm going to click in that, and it's going to create me some particles because it thinks it's an emitter. But we don't want emitter, we want hair. and straight away we've got something which just looks slightly mad, and not even remotely like a rug. So the biggest problem we've got there is the length. Now this is pretty much in real scale, so if I set that to 1 meter, you can see that's like 1 meter, that's too high, and I set it to 0.1 meter, and even that's too high. So we're going to set this to 0.04, so it's kind of just a little bit sticking out like that, and also the numbers are fine, they will do. If we change this over to a render view and give it a moment, you'll see we've kind of got, if I just pop this over here, you can see we've got these little cones. Now we need to fix that straight away. We don't want them as little cones. So what we're going to do is we're going to go down to the hair shape. There you go, pop that there. And you can see the root diameter is set to 1 meter. Well, we know that's completely wrong. It shouldn't be 1 meter even remotely. So let us set that to 0.1. And they now look a bit more strandy. And we can mess around with the strand shape. And you can see what's happened is it shrinks it down, bring it all the way to -1. It sticks more like a nail, because it's making it smaller at the head. Just leaving that at 0 means you get a thicker base and a tiny tip. So that's it. We've got a 0.1 for the diameter of the root, and we've got 0 for the actual tip. And that is what it should be, because, you know, they all feather up. They don't form a flat top, not necessarily. But if you do want a little bit more of a finished top, make it 0.005. And you'll just, it just means it's kind of, it's not rounded on the top, but it means it's not completely closed. So that, even though it has got a closed tip, what I mean by closed is it's not gone to a little point, it's just come to a little, like, kind of a head-ish. So let's move this back down here, and that's got a number of 1,000 and segment set to 5, which we're going to leave. That sounds okay. And the source is on faces, which is good, but I want to change from jittered to random. But for what I'm going to do for right now, I'm just going to turn that back to EV, just because I get some kind of lighting, some kind of finish and feel. I'm not getting the right IS lighting because it doesn't work in EV, but I can see what's happening on my rug, and that's the most important thing right now. What's happening on my rug? Could be a game show. What's happening on my rug? Somebody's wig. So I'm looking at the number on here on the emission and all sort of stuff. So I'm going, okay, I'm going to set this to 5,000, and I've definitely got more there, and I can move around them, and they're all visible. If I just very quickly to render an image, this will give us an idea of how long that's going to take to render something. You can see it's kind of appearing there, so let's pop over to here. And it appears to be rendering down our render view. Looks quite right. Just zoom in there. Are we getting much in terms of hair? Are we really getting much in terms of hair? Don't think we are. There you go. You can see it's a bit limp and weak, and that's fine, because it means what we're getting in our final render is obviously what we're seeing when we're in our modeling, because it is skinny and cranky. Let's go back to layout. No, not to layout. Let's go back to modeling. Get out of edit mode, go back to object mode. There we go. So it's skinny and scrawny, but that's fine, because that's where we have children. And we're going to change this from none to interpolated. I would change it to simple, but you'll see what happens. It kind of has a max region and puts them off the side, so it looks like the fur is actually growing out of the wood, and we don't want that. So we change it to interpolated, and that kind of takes into account all of the edges of the geometry and all the pieces and the bits involved. So that's good. But what also, the render amount there is set to 100, the display amount is set to 10. So just to show you what I mean, if I set this up to 100, give it a minute, there you go, that's now looking like a much thicker rug. By the way, you might notice here that if I push this to here, it's cutting. That's because the near plane of my camera is actually a lot shorter than it probably would need to be. I can actually make that even tighter. So if we go up to view, this is up here. This is our virtual camera, the one we're looking through. It's not our actual camera. So you see the clip is on 0.01. So if I push that to 0.1, yeah. If I change that to 0.01, there you go. We're going to clip apart from right, sort of like 1 millimeter, 1 virtual millimeter in front of the camera. There you go, you can see it there now. So we can get in a little bit closer and see this, but it's very difficult to see what we've got here, really. I'm just going to reduce the display amount, by the way, to 50. And at the moment, it's taking the shader that we have from our actual rug objects. It was difficult to see. So I'm just going to very quickly change that. And the way to do that is in your rug, go to your shaders, and at the top here, you've got your little material window. I'm going to create a new one like this. And in here, I'm going to put in not a principled BSDF, but a principled hair BSDF like that. And I'm going to very quickly call it rug hair, because why not? And at the moment it's dark brown, so do you know what? We'll deal with that. We'll just put it as a dark brown for now. So go back into our shader system. We've got a material there. We want to change that to rug hair. There you go. We can see them now. And well, I'll leave the coordinate system for a second. I'll come back to it shortly, momentarily if not, because we're going to have a very, very quick critter in here as well, as it were. So let's just change that back to this view. Nope, I want to go back to Eevee. Why not? It's much better. But I want to be able to see a little bit that's happening to this rug, because when we put the children on, the first thing they do is they're immediately the same height as our other hairs. So let's go back here, and in the children, where are we? There we go, right. We've got length, which of course is between 0 and 1. So 0 would be the height at nout, and 1 is the height of whatever we've set it at the top. So it's kind of like 100%, or 1 is like 100%, 0 is like 0%. So what we can do here is we can increase a threshold, and if you watch carefully, you just might be able to see that some of the hairs are shrinking a bit. So you can, if you get a bit closer, you can actually see there's a little bit more there going on. And if I bring down this length of the children a little bit more, you can see now it's just a little bit. We have a little bit of variation in the height, which pretty much you would have on a rug. You just would. Simple as that. So if I set this length back to 1, or they're all back. If I put this down to 0.8, just get a little bit of height difference, which is quite nice. And here we've got kink, roughness, clumping, and parting. Parting is the way that they move away from the actual parent hair. So it's just a little bit, it's just a little shift. You don't really see much. I'm going to set this down to 5, set the parting to 1, and it feels a bit of a shift. But what I really want to be messing around with is this, the clumping. I love this. It basically pulls the points towards their parent. So if I push this in a positive number, you can see they all start to go. It's like when you get wet fur on an animal. You kind of get that bit where you get like this, all the hair kind of like pushes together. I do like that. So I'm going to bring that clumping, and I'm going to push it the other way in a negative value. And what that does is it sucks them in at the bottom. Now, it's not necessarily accurate, but it just feels a little bit nicer. And then if I push the shape, in fact, let me do it this way. If I put the clumping to 1, so you can really see what's going on, and then I set the shape here to 1, what it does is it kind of kills the curve and pushes it so it's all the way out in the corner. So if I set that to 0.5, you'll see what I mean. There's a little bit of a kind of like a bend in it. So 0.2, it's all bending outwards. So if I set that clumping to say 0.3, and then I set the shape to -0.1 or -0.3, let's say, you can see it's arcing them inwards. So it's still doing the clumping, but it's kind of pulling them in rather than pushing them out. It's kind of like the curve, and that's why you've got a clump curve there as well. So what you can do with that is you can use a curve to actually dictate how they are. I'm not going to. I quite like just using the simple shape. It does the job. And then obviously we have roughness, so we can add a bit of roughness to the shapes. So if you want to, you can make them look really, really balmy. I'm going to set that clumping to 0.1. Just for the sake of argument, I'm going to put -0.1 for that as well. I'm going to set the uniform to 0.1, and that's too big, so 0.01. So it's just a little bit of a shift in the shape, and you can just keep on you can mess around with it quite a bit. Obviously, you make a random and really big random, it just throws it all over the shop. So very small values. Try and keep to very small values, and then we'll be starting at something which feels a bit more like a rug. And obviously with our hair shape, we've got the diameter root and the tip, which we've already talked about. So if I was to now render this, let's have a look. In fact, what I might do, for the sake of argument, even though, no, I was going to say I put in another light so we can actually see what it's like when it self-shades. I'll tell you what, let's actually do that. If I just go and add a basic light, I'm just going to add a sun lamp. I'm going to lift this up, move it over here a bit, and I'm going to take the lights in here and I'm just going to turn them off. No, oh, actually I'm turned off. Let's just turn them all off. There we go. Nice, handy, all turned off. And then if I go here, I'm just going to pull in a bit here. And let's go to rendering. And let's pull this back so we're actually press 1 and it just be the right size. And let's render image. So we're almost there, but you can see it definitely has that kind of like rug-esque finish, which is exactly what we want. So it feels like that denoising is ruining it. So I'm going to turn off the denoise. Let's not do that. And I'm going to set the noise threshold to 0.01 so it's not quite so tight. And the min samples I'm going to set to 0. So in theory that should help to pull things up a little bit in terms of time. I'm just going to go back to our modeling window. I'm going to zoom in a bit more, just so we see a little bit more of this rug, like that. There we go. What we've got here is our rug, and it's looking okay. But I really want to put a texture on this. I want a texture on this. So how would I go about texturing this? Well, the best way to texture this is to apply a texture to it. Because we've got a separate material, we can apply a texture to it. And also, and this is another thing about the actual physics side of our rug, is that we can pick a different coordinate system. So if we've got a UV map system that we want to use on a similar object that's not this one, we can pick that, which is nice. So I'm going to set the coordinate system on this to our rug. Actually, it doesn't matter because the coordinate system on our rug is, well, basically it's the rug. So that's what it would take. But basically, the material is rug hair, we know that, and we've got this set to rug. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to very quickly do a map, and we're going to do that in Critter. So let's open Critter, and I'm going to show you it. Yeah, Critter 5.0.0, and I'm going to show you something which has been in Critter for a very, very long time, but it's only recently gone into Photoshop. I think about a release and a half back, possibly 2 now, thinking about it. And that is essentially it's wrapping around. So you can paint and you can see your image wrapping around. So let's just get this to a size which you can all see properly. So let's pop it directly over my Blender window so that it just matches up. Come here, you little devil. There we go. And we're going to create a new file. And it's 1024 by 1024, that's fine. And I'm going to go create. And that's going to create me a 1024 by 1024. There you go. And let me just reset that. So we're going to just look, I'm doing it again. And we're going to look at this. And I am going to just move it around a bit. And I'm going to fill this with, let's make it a green. Let's make it a nice green, not a horrible green. Okay. So let's get my bucket tool, go pop. So that now is a green. I'm going to create a new layer on top of this, and I'm going to change this brush that I've got to the, it already is the wallpaper brush. I really like the wallpaper brush. It's smashing. It's very quick. So if I go across it to a purple, I can go raw on a new layer. I can easily turn off like Photoshop, same thing. So I love that. Let's just go back, and I'm going to go to View, Wraparound Mode. Now I've done a shortcut here of Shift W because it used to have a shortcut, and in the most recent versions, 1 or 2 versions back, they took it out. So I put it back in. So now you can just see I've got a totally green screen. So let's pick a color that isn't quite as pneumatic as the, as the purple in relation to the green, even though it's the opposite color. I've forgotten the word right now. Anyway, the opposite. And I'm just going to start painting some blobs, and you can see it's painted them all over because it's wrapping around, which is good because it means you're not really thinking about, and I can paint over here and I can paint over here. It's not thinking about the square that's in the middle so much. It's more just looking at, how to fill up the gaps properly. Not really, ooh, that's a bit off. So just to make it so it doesn't feel as if it's painfully repetitive. And you can just adjust little bits here and there. Try and make it so it feels just, I like that bit there. So let's just come in there a bit like that. Just so it feels like a pattern, a nice pattern, you know? Or in this case, really weird colored pattern. I'm going to make a new layer. And I'm just going to go for a darker tone. I'm just going to very quickly make this brush a bit smaller and just paint a little bit of dark into these. Why not? Let's just do. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Do you know what? No, I don't like the dark. I'm going to go for a different color. Let's go for something a bit red. And go. Whoa, oh, there you go. That's a pretty vial. This is good. It's exactly what the doctor ordered. So I'm just trying to basically put in a bunch of colours, stuff that will stand out. This will definitely stand out. I never thought I could actually paint something that looks as horrible as this. I'm quite proud of myself. I'm going to very quickly add some splodges of white as well, just little ones, because why not? So let's go to white. Click that for another quick layer. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. There we go. And if I press Shift W, which is my shortcut, that is our map. So I'm going to save this as, I said it's a Critter file, and I've already had one that I made that looked a bit laverish. So let's call it rug map 2.kra. It'll put it in there anyway, but let's put it in. There we go, and we're going to file, and we're going to export, and we're going to pick that, and then we're going to change this down to a PNG and go save. So I've now got a PNG, saving away, which I'm going to bring into here. So we're now in our rug hair, so we go to rug hair, and on this color bit, we can do it in here as equally as if we were in the shading editor. We just click the color again, and we go, I want an image texture in there, so it pops, it'll open all the stuff you need. I'm going to go open, I'm going to point it at rug map 2 and go open, there you go. And it's going to start painting that into our actual hairs, which is lovely. It's not lovely, obviously, the actual shape and design of it is pretty poor, but the point is that now, if we go into shading, come on, we're going to shading, and this is going to play merry hell, so let's do this. It probably won't come up, don't think it does very well, no, so let's just take it to that one there, and I'm going to hit Control T on that to give me some mapping coordinates. I'm going to scale this by 0.5, 0.5, and 0.5 to make it bigger. No, I'm not going to do that actually. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add, let's just do it this way, let's add a value, and let's just plug that directly into the scales and set that to 2. So it repeats, there you go, that's nice. And let's go back to the rendering here, and I am going to hit render image. So there you go, that's just rendered. That took a total of 1.5 minutes. That's actually not too bad, but we can see it's definitely a ruggy kind of feel. We could theoretically go in there and add some more adjustment into the shader, so we get a little bit more sort of like shift, a little bit of noise maybe into the color using a noise texture, just to break up those colors a little bit more. But what we can do is we can adjust things like the random roughness actually in the principled hair BSDF, and just doing that random roughness can make quite a bit of a difference. I would pretty much leave that the incidence of refraction, and the coat. Well, that's pretty much like a clear coat. So if you put that as 0.5, you'll start to get more light on it. I am probably going to just do, to try and help this along, I'm just going to go back to the modeling, and if I just make sure I unlock the camera so we don't lose that particular angle, let's just pop this here and go back to object mode. There we go, you can see all these nice little things. I'm going to create a IV sphere, icosphere. I'm thinking of a UV sphere. But that's okay. So let's go size. Let's just make this a bit smaller, and let's move it into here and up. And let's just stick subdivision surface on that. Give it a couple of those so we can actually see them here. and make it so it's kind of sitting in it like that. And I'm just going to give it a straightforward, let's get a shading. I just want a very boring shader on that, but we wanted just to get some shadow in there. In fact, I'm probably going to move the light looking at that. I think it could do with changing the light. But let's just give it a pretty boring shader like a red plastic ball. So we'll reduce the roughness a bit, and we'll increase the specular. And I'm going to give it a subsurf of 0.2 is a bit high, 0.05 maybe. There we go. So it does pick a bit more light up. And then let's go to our sunlight, and let's just rotate this. So I'm going to change my angle here so I can see. Let's change that to a side view. And let's rotate this a little bit like this. There we go. Let's go to a top view, and let's bring this over here. Oh yes, of course. We have walls, don't we? Let's change that to a point light then. And let's increase its power to 90 watts. There we go. That's kind of nice. Let's move it this way a little bit and down a bit. I should bring it up a bit. Yeah. Let's leave it there. I quite like that. That looks kind of funky. So I'm going to go back to the rendering view, and also what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick this up, and I'm going to increase the max samples on the actual render to 512, and we'll see what we'll get with that. 0.005 on those, and I'm going to set this off to render, and then when it's finished I think we shall reconvene. So I'm also very quickly just going to save this as rug. There we go, because it's good to have it. And let's hit that button again, and then in fact let's change that to slot number 1 because it shouldn't be R3 anyway, and let's go render image. And there you have it. That's 6 minutes and 7 seconds, which is a bit long, obviously, for what that is. But you can see pretty well, if I just zoom in here, you can see there's a feeling of real sort of like clumpy hair. In fact, I don't know if any of you have a dog like we do. We've got a lovely yellow Labrador called Ginny. And she has these things called vet beds, and it's kind of this really relatively tight, sort of like finish, and because of the way they bend over on the edges, which is why I raised up in the middle ever so slightly, you get this kind of cracking of the this fake plasticky sort of like hair that this vet bed is made of, because it's designed basically to be nice and cozy and not difficult to clean. And it literally does this, which is what we're getting because we've raised up the middle and not the edges. So we've got a slight angle in the normal, and this is compensating and taking that into account. So that is kind of how you do a rug, really. What you could also do with the rug, if I just pop this back here, but then here you've got vertex groups. So in theory, you can actually use a weight paint. So you can actually have a texture that you create with weight painting, and then you can click it, because essentially it works like a vertex group. It will be visible in here for you to mess around with. So you can change the density, you can change the length, which is the multiplier based on the height you've got. So you can change the amount of clumping, you can change the amount of kinks. Same with the two roughnesses and the roughness and twist. So you can do a lot in here to make it feel even more random. And these are generally for fur, I would think, really. But I mean, you can use them if you want like a threadbare rug or something like that, where you can make holes in it and stuff using the density and messing around with the length and stuff. But you can have a lot of fun. You can have a heck of a lot of fun with this. And I definitely recommend sticking your toes into the water, because if you are going to do an architectural thing and you've got a rug in there, it needs to be like a rug. So, I mean, what you'll probably find actually compared to what we've got here is you might decide to make them a little bit thicker and reduce the number by doing that. And I mean, the child number really is the way to do it. Always reduce it with the child number. So whereas the render amount here is 50, if you set the render amount to 50, the display amount just sets to 25. So you're rendering half as many And then you go back to your, let me just do this here. Where are we? Into the, where are you? It's not there. It's hair shape. There we go. So the root diameter is 0.2, so it makes it a little bit thicker on the bottom. And the tip was at 0.01, make that a little bit thicker as well. And then in theory, if I just change this to a rendered view, it'll be a little bit quicker, just a little bit quicker. But you can see it feels a little bit more, there we go. A little bit more shaggy, I suppose is the way to put it. It feels a little bit more clothy rather than cottony, really, I suppose, rather than sort of like fake. But the more you muck around with it, the more you add more texture, the more you change it around, the better it'll be. This is just starting you off, getting you to the idea of getting a proper rug rather than just a texture up on the floor. It's just better. It's just better. Anyway, listen, I hope this has been of some use to you. If it has, let me know. If it hasn't, also let me know. I have had some feedback recently on a little poll that I put up, which was what you'd like me to do more of, and whether it's modelling or whether it's texturing or whether it's more than 1x1s and so on. So this is a kind of a semi-foray, kind of a 1x1 bit, but we've done here before. But also into how to make a rug, because making a rug basically is a very simple operation. You just make the shape and then do that. So anyway, speak to you soon. Take care. Won't be long to the next one. And if any of you are also following the podcast that I do called the Grafters Podcast, Graphtters, and obviously I know you're a Blender head, so you might be pleased to know that myself and John have just interviewed a gentleman called Chris McFall, who is a big guy in the freelance world of using Blender in the UK. He's also an educator who works in Wales and produces some unbelievably good artwork and short films. Chris McFall, his company is called Hollow Pixel. I believe it's called Hollow Pixel. Anyway, I'll try and stick it in the notes to this. But also, yeah, if you follow the Grafters podcast, that's myself and a mate of mine called John Stopforth, and we talk about the education system, mostly in the UK. We talk about the software industry, and we talk about open source as well as the expensive stuff. And in the one with Chris particularly, it was a bit of a blender fest, if I'm honest. Please, 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 don't forget to subscribe. Please hit the like button if you're enjoying this, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care, guys. Bye.